Nothing to talk about. That's what I thought was the case just 15 or 20 minutes ago. But man, I started to look around college football. Actually, I prepare more than 15 minutes for this show. Come on, folks. Doesn't it show? I prepared for about 18 minutes. There we go. So we looked around in terms of what we've collected over the last few days here at the Voice of College Football. What is going on out there on social media as it pertains to college football? Of course, not just the nonsense concerning the typical fights within college football about rivalries and who's delusional and all of that, but in regards to real news, we've collected quite a few things. And even I wouldn't consider most of this to be real news, but legitimate topics. Let's go with that. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football for the time being through 8 shows, the College Football Show. However, we are taking your name suggestions. I mentioned the other day that we will do a show here very soon. We just have not had the time where we're going to go through all the names that have been collected. I collected about 21 the other day, and that is far shy of how many have been submitted. So I've noticed that in the chat, a lot of people have had name suggestions, but I have stated, please don't leave those naming suggestions in the chat. They're gone. They're lost. I'm not going to go back and watch a 2-hour show to try to find those names. Please either hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail, or what is most effective is to just leave that in the comments section of any of the videos, because I just click on comments on YouTube. I get all the comments. I can go through and collect those names. We've had maybe 50 or 60 total, probably more than that at this point, but I've only collected 21. There is a clear front runner, but it is not too late for you to rally with your name for this show. And somebody will be the winner, regardless of what name is selected, whether it's one of the viewers, one of you, or mine. And you get your choice of merch. One item, no limit, at the Voice of College Football merch store. Actually having a merch meeting this week to upgrade what we do in the merch store. So be looking out for that. I do not promote the merchandise, the fine merchandise that Joey Foster has collected here at the Voice of College Football. So much appreciate you stopping by. The Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. That is probably the most important thing I say every day toward the future of this fine broadcast. The Amazon link in the description section of all the videos. Same shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. It's the one way to contribute to the Voice of College Football financially, in which it does not cost you a penny. It's the Amazon link. Nothing gets changed in regards to your account. If you use it once and something goes wrong, please tell me. That has never happened. That has never happened. I have sat down. I have been diligent to sit down with multiple people, not just, hey, let's try it out once. No, I have used various friends, family members as guinea pigs to say, use this Amazon link and let's sit down. Let's go through it. Did anything change? Nope. It's like I just used my Amazon link. Exactly. Those folks at Amazon are pretty smart and they're rich. They're worth $2 trillion. So when you make your next purchase, think, hey, I can send $3 or $4 to the Voice of College Football. And that comes from Amazon. So we can have Amazon fund the show as well. And if we do more of that and bring in sponsors, then we don't need to do this, which is, of course, this is going to be a 1-hour show each and every Monday through Friday, but I don't want it to be a 1-hour show. I would like it to be a 2-hour show, 3-hour show, 4-hour show, 5-hour show, whatever you want it to be. So $100 gets us to an overtime second hour. So we appreciate you being here for that. One guest today for sure. I believe Josh Neighbors of the Big 12 Watch on Bleacher Report and 103.7 The Buzz will be stopping by. Okay, let's go through the headlines. But more interesting to me than what I saw in the headlines would be just some topics that we gathered. And also keep in mind that this week's shows here at the Voice of College Football are brought to you by Chris Gates Fitness. Chris is our partner here at the Voice of College Football, and his new initiative is Training Camp. And we will tell you more about that very soon. All right. To the headlines. First, let's check the chat. See if there's anything interesting out there with all of you fine folks. Jackson, right out of the gate, number one. That's to be expected. David Greenshield, good to see you. It's 10:06 a.m. and the team up north is still a cheating program. I will not comment on that. I will not say a word about this NCAA investigation today unless I'm asked. So please call the show if you would like to discuss or send in a super chat. I will discuss. But man, I can keep talking about it if my job requires me to. But I will have to say otherwise, hey, if you have not been watching for the last couple of days, I have probably gone on 30 and 45-minute rants with no questions from anyone, no calls, just rants about everything that runs through my consciousness concerning this issue. Both sides, the Michigan side, the other side. And that's what I've delivered. And it's out there. Please watch the shows from this week. However, of course, if you call, as long as you call with a college football question or comment, I'm going to respond to it. Okay. All right. Also, check out Michigan Podcast. Again, I cannot express how much I appreciate that Steve Dace values my thoughts to give me time most weeks, just about every week, to come on his Michigan podcast and talk college football, Michigan first and foremost, of course. And I appeared on the Michigan podcast this week. Check it out, Steve Dace's Michigan podcast. And it was not going to be brought up, but I mentioned it as it pertains to football, meaning my one point is I was asked about not spring practice, it's not spring, as I was asked about fall practice concerning questions, concerns about Michigan's preparation, keys to the season, keys to making progress in August camp. And my overriding first point was simply, regardless of what you think of Michigan's football program and the cheating scandal, we know they cheated. We don't know who cheated. We won't go through all that. We know that there was cheating by at least an individual. Okay. That you have to admire the perseverance, the determination, the focus of the players in particular, maybe the coaches, if they were able to focus and game plan and lead and do all the things that they needed to do as coaches in the face of adversity, I admire them. But if they brought the adversity upon themselves, that's what I don't admire. Anytime you see some kind of celebrity talk about their adversity and what they were able to overcome, sometimes it's legitimate adversity, sometimes it's self-imposed adversity. And once that self-imposed adversity comes, and if you're able to overcome that and actually repent of those sins, then that's to be commended. Absolutely. But if you're overcoming your self-imposed adversity and whining and complaining about it, then that's another thing. So anyway, focusing on the players being able to fight through the black cloud over them, the criticism, the adversity, the speculation, everything involved in that as 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old athletes, that's to be admired, and going through to win a national championship. So my point about this 2024 edition. And I know at Michigan and other schools, they list the number of the team 145, team 150. They've been playing Michigan football forever. So, yeah, they were playing back in the 1870s, 80s, whenever it was. So whatever year we're in, they're at like team 145. That this particular team, there's good indication, there's excellent indication that this program's equipped to do that because the coaching staff had to go through it. The players mostly had to go through it. So they've already been through this, but every team has a different dynamic, different head coach, different coordinators, different this, different that, all of that involved. And every team is a bit different. No leadership, or there's leadership voids. We don't know that how they're going to be filled, but of course there are leaders that are now in the NFL. So just the dynamic of dealing with that possible distraction. All right. I went into that. Why? Because we will not talk about the Michigan scandal today unless somebody brings it up. You can give me a call. The number's in the chat. The link is in the chat. We also posted on Twitter, on X. I'll make that transition at some point. On X, we post that every day as well to try to get as many new callers in as possible. Would be phenomenal. The call-in system, in terms of doing it the old-fashioned way over the phone line, I cannot promise that that will be in play this football season. I would like it to be. I certainly have invested in the equipment to do so. But we've had all sorts of operational situations, moves, and so forth that have changed a number of things. So, again, the headlines don't necessarily interest me much, but there are some topics that I think are fun, interesting, of note. And so if we go to the headlines, then this is what we've got. Now, we mentioned a number of times this week. What did we say in talking about the beginning of fall camp? That fans want intel immediately. These players step on the field. They're basically just going through physicals the first day, the second day. They're not in pads forever. It seems they're just doing conditioning and drills, and people want intel, and there's not much intel to go through. Well, we've gotten to the point in camp in which there is intel. And unfortunately, I said most likely most of that information that's going to come out, what is it going to be? It's going to happen at some point, a major injury in college football. We talked to our buddy David Waters from Gators Breakdown on Tuesday, so be looking out for those video clips on the Florida channel and the SEC channel, because David Waters is the best when it comes to Florida football coverage. So please check out those clips. But we talked about Montrell Johnson, the Florida running back who has been their leading rusher the last two seasons. He may be out for the Miami game, but he should be back. It's not that serious, not season threatening, but this one is, unfortunately. So what we've got here is that Nebraska offensive lineman Teddy Prohaska, I've said that name a zillion times. He used to host the Nebraska show, but I've been away from Nebraska football for a few weeks. Teddy Prohaska, we want to pronounce the young man's name correctly, has suffered a season-ending knee injury for the third time in 4 years. That was announced on Tuesday. The 6'10", 315-pound junior was in line to be the starting left tackle. He tore the anterior cruciate ligament in his right knee Monday during a one-on-one drill. As Matt Rule states there, Teddy is going on 4 surgeries. That has to be tough. So Nebraska football loses arguably its best offensive lineman, certainly a veteran, and one of their best starting left tackle typically has that distinction. So a big blow to Nebraska football, trying to end a bolus streak. And redshirt freshman Gunnar Katula has been working at left tackle with the number one offense. Prohaska played 10 games last season, started at least 5, or the last 5 at left tackle, started the first 3 games in 2022 before an injury to his right knee ended that season. 21, the same thing, ACL to the left knee. Roger Gradney, a freshman, also a season-ending knee injury. So let's keep in mind that while there can be criticism at times of these players in particular, they're making too much money, they are treated like kings, whatever the criticisms, understand the risk to their health and the shortness of their careers. All right, we got a call coming in. We got our buddy Biggs Mike's calling. What's going on today?
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Hello. I'm good. What's going on?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Not much. It's been a while since I called in. Everything been going good?
Everything's going just fine. Gearing up for the season. How are
I
you?
know it's almost here. It's right around the corner. I just had a couple of questions. How do you feel the Michigan ranking is being ranked 8th? You think that's a fair ranking, or just a little bit of disrespect, or what your thoughts on that are? Because
Well, I'm going to give you two answers.
having
Sure.
Notre Dame ranked over Michigan again. Just wondering your thoughts. You think that's all due to quarterback? I know we lost a lot of talent, but we
Well,
still
when
have
you
a
said
lot coming back.
again, are you keeping track of Notre Dame being ranked in the preseason above Michigan?
Well, Notre Dame seems to always be ranked in the top 10, and it's just Notre Dame. I think they always get a couple points for being Notre
Well,
Dame.
what's funny about that, I don't necessarily know if that's the truth. I can't refute that, but at one point, I did backtrack on Notre Dame and I backtracked on Texas because that is the common criticism, is that they are overrated every year. And I do recall with Texas, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
That was not the case. Notre Dame, I'd have to go back. It would be interesting to see what was the preseason ranking versus the postseason ranking with Notre Dame. I would guess that it's not nearly as egregious as you believe. But regardless, so I look at it this way. So before I get to the evaluation of the teams, I'll go to this evaluation first. So I'm going to go down 2 different paths. One is philosophical. One is that I don't care where anybody's ranked. I don't think it matters. I think that these guys, we either need to hold them to some type of logical standard or they can do whatever they want, because the whole ranking system is flawed to begin with. Because I've asked a number of AP voters what they take into consideration when they rank teams in the preseason, and they run the gamut. So they don't even know. It's not like they're handed some kind of instructions to say, this is what you are ranking. Most of them are making predictions. I don't agree with that. You're almost self-fulfilling what the season is going to be, making a self-fulfilling prophecy to say, I think Michigan's the 5th best team in the country, but I think their schedule's brutal, so I'm going to rank them 13th. Well, that's not a ranking. That's a projection. That's a prediction. That's not a ranking. So the whole thing's flawed. I don't care if people rank Rutgers number 1, Wake Forest number 2. I would actually be fine with that. That would be great. I would love to see a top 25 because none of it has to be justified. So why shouldn't some crazy top 25? I would love to see one of the AP voters submit that type of ballot and then get a bunch of criticism. And my response would be, we don't evaluate any of these other top 25s. Okay, so that's my first thought. It's philosophical that you can rank whoever you want, wherever you want. It doesn't matter until they play a game, and then your ranking better be justifiable based on the game results.
I,
But in the preseason, I don't care who you rank.
well,
If they want to rank UCLA number one, that UCLA's number one. That's fine with me. Okay,
I think it mattered more, if you don't mind me saying, like when the BCS and then
sure.
the college, for like, what
Yeah,
was it? The year was like USC, Oklahoma, then Auburn was ranked something way in the back, and then they could never climb that mountain, like to get in there because they weren't ranked high enough to begin with. And then with the college football
sure.
playoffs, yeah, the top four, it was really tough to get in, right?
Yeah.
Now that there's 12, it doesn't really matter. I know you do the top
Well,
25 that matters, which
that's
makes
not
more
why it
sense.
doesn't matter, though.
Yeah, I understand. It's just all
No,
projection,
it
right?
doesn't
As you said.
matter because these guys don't determine who goes to a national championship anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the BCS, they did. So it
Yeah.
was extreme. So your example from 2004 is one of my favorite examples. Why did Auburn not play in the BCS championship game that year? Because they were the lowest ranked of the three teams that were undefeated to start the season. So the perception was that they were not as good as Oklahoma and USC. So USC and Oklahoma kept their poll positions at 1 and 2 the entire season. Auburn started number 19 preseason, so they just hit a ceiling at number 3. And regardless of how well they played, how good the conference was, they didn't move the top 2 out. So basically, that championship was determined partly because of preseason perception.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that doesn't exist anymore because it doesn't tangibly exist because the playoff committee selects the teams, not the coaches
Mhm.
poll, not the AP poll. Now, is there some impact or influence from all of that? I believe that there is. And it perpetuates itself. It keeps going because let's say you are favoring a particular conference or particular set of teams, well, then you're going to over evaluate the teams that they're playing, and their rankings are inflated, which is a self perpetuating cycle for giving too much weight to those games, and so forth and so on. So, to your original question, is Michigan overranked, underranked? We could also have this approach to it. Why doesn't everyone, like I hear sometimes that the defending national champion should be ranked number 1 to start the next season. Okay, that's fine with me. Again, it's arbitrary, but that's at least some kind of tangible measurement. And then you know what you have to do? Then every team, it's only logical, then every team in the top 25, you just take the top 25 from the final season, the final one from the previous season, and you just make that the preseason top 25. Is Michigan better than Notre Dame? I trust Michigan more than Notre Dame at this point. But yeah, of course, that has to do with there's more information out there. So I don't want to discredit AP writers, and we have yet to see their poll, but it's going to be extremely close to the coaches poll because they always are. So that shows us how much groupthink's involved. Like if everyone lived in a silo and didn't trade information, and you just asked all of these guys to rank the 25 best teams in the country, this poll would be so much different and there would be so much different variation. But there's this collective thought that these are the best teams, then this is the next tier, and then this is the next, and everybody just kind of follows in line with what everyone thinks. And so when the AP poll comes out in a couple of weeks, it's going to look almost exactly like this poll without us knowing anything. To your point about the accuracy of these polls, I posted a video the other day that ran through the last 3 coaches polls. And this is astounding to me that they only got 39 out of 75 in the preseason. Only 39 of their top 25 times 3, the last 3 seasons, 39 out of 75 finished in the top 25. That's a horrible percentage. Barely 50% of these teams are going to finish in the top 25. 2 years ago, they missed 7 of the top 10. Did not finish ranked. I'm not talking about they didn't finish in the top 10. Like their number 7 team finished number 11. That's a good projection, or whatever you want to call it, evaluation of that team. But they didn't even finish in the top 25. So Michigan, Notre Dame, 5 and 8, whatever the rank. What are they? Michigan's 8.
It's 8, Notre Dame 7.
Notre Dame
Ole
7.
Miss 6, yeah, Alabama 5. I think it's most. I mean, I know a lot depends on our quarterback, and
And losing 13 players to the NFL draft and losing your head
it
coach.
indeed, and no doubt. But they do have a lot of talent back, especially on
Sure.
defense. And I love JJ McCarthy. He tend to have his biggest games against Ohio State, and then he made key throws when he needed it to. But JJ normally averaged 150 to 200 yards passing a game, but he made key throws when it was needed. If Orji can replicate that a little, he doesn't have to throw 300 yards a game. I think Michigan's still going to run the ball 30 plus times. They're still going to do that. I mean, they're still going to ground and pound it.
Do you care what Michigan is ranked?
No. I care what they ranked at the end of the season. No, okay. At the end of it all depends on where they end at. So what happens in the season? Yeah, it all depends. The coaches poll is it's how many of them are actually what? Yeah, I don't know. It's just
based on, and I don't pretend to know exactly what every coach is doing. Nobody knows pertaining to this poll, but based on working with 3 sports information departments when I covered the SEC and knowing how they operate and knowing the coaches and interviewing them on a regular basis, basically what these coaches do generally is they don't fill out the top 25 teams in the country. They have their sports information director do that. And they, depending on how much they get, probably some of them just say, I don't care, just fill the whole thing out. But most of them, especially as it proceeds through the season, they're thinking about their team. They're thinking about their agenda, their objectives. So they give some directions to say, you know what, rank our rival, whether their thought process is rank them low or rank them high because we're going to play them or whatever. They give probably 3 instructions. We don't like this team, rank them down. And that's that. And then the rest gets filled out by the SID.
Just think about the schedule. I mean, Michigan, Texas, Oregon, OSU. Now, if they win one of those 3 games, like go 10-2, I have a good feeling they're making the playoffs. But if they lose all 3 of those games, I know that, there's a lot of variables that come into play. Will they make it or not? But I think if they win one of those 3 games, they would be in the playoffs at 10-2 in the Big Ten.
I agree.
Now,
I agree. 10-2 is going to get any SEC. Well, based on the last 10 years, running the model through the last 10 years, 10-2 gets any SEC or Big Ten team into the playoff. Now that we could have some kind of log jam of 10-2 teams, that's possible, or a 9-3 team that looks tremendously impressive. I think that's a possibility with some of these schedules being as different as they are. So Michigan could make it. If Michigan lost early, let's say to USC, let's say they lose to USC in Texas,
now,
but they lose by a field goal in both games, and then they lose one more game, Oregon, Ohio State, pick your teams, and those teams are as good as they're supposed to be. Oregon's number 2 in the country, and Ohio State's number 3 in the country, and they both finish 11-1, and Michigan beats one of them and then loses another field goal game. I think that they'll, depending on what's going on elsewhere in the country, have a strong playoff resume. Ten and 2, they're in.
Looking at your Buckeyes, they tend to have the Michigan
model,
Buckeyes, the non-conference this year, right? Your Buckeyes, come on now. You love the Buckeyes.
I don't get a check from them.
Okay, the team,
no affiliation.
The team that you're a fan of, the team that you're a fan of since you were a child, the team that you've been a fan of. with their non-conference schedule, it's basically what Michigan did the last 3 years. Do you have
Yes.
any hesitation, like going into? I know they have Iowa before Oregon, but they don't really have a test at all until they get to Iowa. Do you have any kind of like just not having real competition at all? I mean, Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall. Like, do you have any kind of like to be up? I mean,
I think I think every team's different. So every team's preparation and their ability to get up for big games, their needed time to develop, all of those dynamics are different with every team. But I think you answered your own question by saying that Michigan had a similar non-conference schedule the last 3 years.
mm-hmm, indeed.
Did it hurt them?
It did not. And this Ohio State team reminds me of the Michigan team of everybody coming back. That 2023 Michigan team. That's what this 2024 Ohio State team is like. They all came back. So, and it just really depends on your QB. I think your defense,
yeah,
your defense is going to be lights out, top 5 defense most likely. I mean, that defense is loaded.
And once we get to the playoffs, if somebody can knock out Georgia for Ohio State like they did for Michigan, then that would be even better.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying Michigan could not have beaten Georgia, but I think that's a toss-up game, and according to Vegas, it would have been a Georgia.
I mean, going into the Ohio State game, Ohio State was always favored over Michigan the last 2 years.
Not last year.
I thought they were still favored.
No, I think Michigan was like a 2-point favorite.
Because I know. Okay,
Somebody
I know the
check me on that. Michigan 2-point favorite against Ohio State last year.
I know the 2022 Ohio State was a 9-point favorite at home.
Yes.
And then the year before, yeah, I thought Ohio State was ranked over. I think it was 2 versus 3. Ohio State's always been ranked over Michigan in those games the last 2 years. But yeah, I'm excited for the season, ready to go. I know hopefully the Buckeyes. I have a feeling that Oregon game is the game. That's gonna be a heck of a game. And these days, if they lose it, it really doesn't matter. I mean, not say it doesn't matter, but if they lose Oregon, but they win out, they're still in the Big Ten championship. So it's gonna.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, now if they lose to Oregon, they lose to Michigan, but they'll still be 10-2. But they beat Penn State at Penn State. They're still in the playoffs. It doesn't matter. 10-2.
Yeah,
they're still in there. I don't see 3 losses on your. I mean, I don't know how you guys would lose more than 2 games. I mean, I don't really 1 game to be honest. So, I mean,
Iowa would be the next one.
If it was, you say Iowa?
Yeah.
If it was at Iowa, I would be more worried for you guys, but it's in Ohio State.
Sure.
Yeah. If it was at night in Iowa, you know how that goes. But yeah, I think you guys would be fine there. Is this Will Howard? How does Will Howard do? I think you guys are going to run the ball a lot more than you have the last few years.
Yeah. And Ohio State's actually run the ball more than people think that they do.
Oh, no. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. They haven't been slinging it around since C.J. Stroud left. Really.
Even the C.J. Stroud team in 2022, where do you think they ranked in pass attempts in college football that year?
He was so efficient. I don't think he would throw. I can't even tell you.
They were 65th in pass attempts.
Yeah, he was so efficient. Like he didn't throw it. I mean, he was just so accurate, and he would have a lot of times he was sitting out the 4 quarters. He wasn't even throwing.
Yeah,
y'all were blowing people out.
Had a lot of blowouts.
Yeah, I mean, people make fun of JJ for having 150 yards a game, but most of that season last year, he wasn't playing the 4 quarters. So I mean, because the non-conference was horrible, and then most of the other games they were blowing people out.
Yeah,
until they got to Ohio State.
Dame.
Notre Dame led it.
No, I'm saying they played Notre Dame. Their non-conference. Are you talking about C.J. Stroud's non-conference opponents?
Yeah. Oh no.
Those Oregon and Notre Dame.
I just want to thank you for being the most reasonable Buckeye fan that I listen to or follow. Twitter's a cesspool of
oh sure.
Of
course it is.
It's just hard to even Michigan did nothing right. All they did was cheat. None of the changes they made in 2021 matter. They, getting a whole new coaching staff, new defensive coordinators. None of that matters. It's all Connor Stallions told, they told Ohio State not to tackle certain plays. they told that, so it's just Michigan did nothing. They just cheated. So something I got to hear for
what looks bad for you versus what looks good about, I'm not talking about direct evidence, but narratives that are kind of linked to evidence. What looks bad is that Michigan was a 8-4, 9-3 team until 2021. And we know what happened in 2021. So that's what looks bad to people. Now, what is in your favor in a huge way is obviously once the cheating was removed and whatever impact it had, I'm not commenting on that right this second, just
we're done
whether
there.
it had zero effect or a ton of effect. They then went on and they beat the best teams on their schedule and they won a national championship.
Yeah, it's just something a Michigan fan as I'm gonna have to deal with. It's just what it is. And if the tables were turned, I would be saying the same thing. If Ohio State got caught doing it, I would be throwing it in their face. It's just
thank you for admitting that. I don't know how many people. I think I've run into the first. I'm not going to call you unbiased because I'm not unbiased. Nobody's unbiased completely. I try to be. That's my attempt, but I'm not. I have blood flowing through my veins. Of course, I'm not completely unbiased. But thank you for making that statement, because it would be a tremendous exercise. We could never do it, of course, because it would take an act of God to say we are ridding the memory banks of everyone, and suddenly everyone who's a Michigan fan is an Ohio State fan and vice versa. And now you look at history and all of this through the exact opposite lens. And you know what? The same people that are saying all these Michigan, regardless of, let's say, all-time records and all the ones that are on the Michigan side saying we've done this and we won the most games and we won the most national championships, would be saying, taking the Ohio State side to say, well, we got a better record since such and such date, and we got more conference titles since we joined the conference. They'd be using all the.
I mean, it's just what I mean. Yes, the Ohio State fans be like, well, we didn't,
Sure,
we all be saying the same exact thing, and
yes,
Ohio State
but just
fans,
flipped.
It would just be completely flipped. Is all it is, and
exactly.
I think that season last year I've been waiting for that season. I mean, I'm 43. I'm 43, so I saw the 1997 season, right? And that was great. I've been waiting a long time for a championship to come Michigan back to Ann Arbor, and it sucks that is always going to be next to that title, but it doesn't take away the memories that happened when they went through, that run they had. So, going through Penn State, going through Ohio State, going through Alabama, who, it's Alabama, and then topping it off with Washington. And people forget Washington beat this great Oregon team twice, who everyone's hyped about. So I know they have a different quarterback now, and different players, but Washington beat Oregon twice, and Michigan held Washington to 13 points last year in that title game. So it's they're not going to take away the memories of that confetti falling. So it's been a long time coming, and but yeah, all the Ohio State fans, I just intend to, when they start going at me, I just post this comment by Maurice Clarett about the Michigan scandal and how stupid he even thinks it is, and he actually played football, and I just post that on their timeline and leave it. So I don't know if you saw that Maurice Clarett comment.
I've heard about it.
Yeah,
but see, one of the curious things to me in all of this, and I've stated this repeatedly, especially over the last few days since this has come up and there is all this new information out there, is that it would be much better if at least football minds could agree on how much this affects the game. But they don't. They're all over the gamut. I've seen everything from it doesn't matter to it's very important. It's crucial. From respected football. Maurice Clarett, I'm sorry to discredit him to a certain, he's been on the field, at that level and achieved at that level So it's nothing that I can in any way match athletically, obviously. So he gets a ton of credit. But I don't know that Maurice Claret is a mastermind when it comes to football strategy.
I haven't heard any of the Ohio State like current players blaming it on the signs. Like they said Michigan was more physical. Michigan, in the trench. Like I haven't heard any current Ohio State players blaming it on the signs, and especially last year where that was the game because Ohio State knew there was no signs. None of that was all that was gone that game. And Michigan, that was a heck of a game. I mean, that went down to the final drive. That was a classic game. And like I didn't hear none of those players complaining about the last few years. But it's always as fans, and Michigan did nothing right. They just cheated. That's all that matters. But it's fine. It's a new season, ready to go. I'm excited for the season, and I'll be calling in more often now. Sorry, I think life's been crazy the last few months, but I've been listening. I'll still watch your shows. So there's not much time to call in, but I always enjoy it. And thanks for being the most reasonable Buckeye fan that I hear. So I actually do pros and cons, or like for Michigan, not just all cons. Michigan did. Like I saw someone posted, it was like all the changes they made too with the coaching staff, like they literally revamped the coaching staff. But none of that matters. And our both the defensive coordinators or in the NFL now is head defensive coaches. So, and but we'll see what happens. But I want to wish you and your family the best, Mark, and hope you everything goes. Hope you have a great season, and I look forward to more call-in shows. And hope you enjoy your day, bud.
Well, thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. Have a good day,
my friend. All right, you too, bud.
It's a classy caller, our buddy Biggs Mikes, who calls us. Not heard from him for a while, so it's good to hear from him. Okay, before we get to our next call, and I got to say that I rue the day that I ever admitted to being an Ohio State fan. So I'm guessing that really nobody here, nobody watching right now, which is apparently 53 people, or watching this, which is going to be, I don't know, we range from anywhere from 800 to 2,000 people eventually going to watch it. Hopefully that increases substantially. That remember the day in which nobody knew who I rooted for. It was comical. That is my defense for my analysis here. That is my ultimate defense for my analysis, is that when nobody knew who I rooted for, nobody could figure out I was an Ohio State fan. I would get comments to videos and comments in the chat claiming I hated Ohio State. Hated them. Hated Ohio State. All right, we appreciate the super chat coming in. Here's the deal. We go for 1 hour at least every day, Monday through Friday, through the football season. So January 21st, the day after the national championship game, then we will decide what we're doing going forward from there. But, we need your contributions. We're looking forward to your contributions for us to stay on. Hey, I'd like to stay on for 5 hours. I would cancel my meeting starting at noon. We do have Josh Neighbors coming up from Bleacher Report and 103.7 The Buzz to talk some Big 12 football here at some point. Let me get to this super chat contribution. We appreciate Matthew Miller. Matthew hosts our Texas show. It's every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern time on the Texas channel. Matthew states here, thank you for the contribution. Mark, we talked about RBU a long time ago. I think it's Texas. 6 college football Hall of Fame running backs, plus Jamal Charles, Priest Holmes, Bijan Robinson, etc. Well, as I typically take on these kind of questions, I can scattershot an answer and kind of poke around and mention this school and that school and try to list running backs. Much of that, of course, is going to be skewed by their NFL careers. So we have to lay that down, that part of the argument. Do we include their NFL stardom, or is it just based on college production? But the way I approach topics is I would have to say, well, I got to sit down and I got to go through every school and exhaustively make a list of running backs. But off the top of my head, Texas running backs. Well, the three that you mentioned at the back end of the line that are not in the College Football Hall of Fame is a pretty damn awesome list with those three guys. However, keep in mind that I don't even know if any of those three players will be eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame. I doubt if Priest Holmes will be, or Jamal Charles. Maybe Bijan Robinson was a first team All America running back. I'm almost certain that just like the idiotic 60% winning percentage rule for coaches, the College Football Hall of Fame, as I understand it, also has a rule concerning players that you had to achieve a first team All America status. Again, guidelines are good. Rules, when you're talking about thinking adults, are typically not good. When you're dealing with children, yes, have rules. When you're dealing with adults that can think deductively, then you have guidelines. 60% winning percentage for a coach. Guideline, not, okay, it's 0.600. Mike Leach, 0.596. He's out. Can't be in the Hall of Fame because his team won a bowl game 3 weeks after he passed away that would have lifted him to 60% winning percentage. But we are going to keep him out of the Hall. That shouldn't even be a conversation. Yes, a coach's record is first and foremost. That should be the first number we go to. What's the coach's record that we are considering for the Hall of Fame? But is that the end of the discussion? Of course not. And just like this Hall of Fame, and I know that Matthew is not commenting on the Hall of Fame, but RBU. And my initial reaction, Matthew, to that is, of course, you think Texas is RBU. I've always thought it was USC off the top of my head. Wow. USC. Yeah. Certainly in the 60s and 70s into the 80s, nobody could touch USC, but that's only 3 decades. And they have fallen off considerably, except for one, Reggie Bush, Lendale White. Ronald Jones was a really good back here in the last 5 or 6 years. But of course, they had the run of Mike Garrett, O.J. Simpson, Anthony Davis, Ricky Bell, Charles White, Marcus Allen. Those guys were pretty much consecutive from about 65 to 82. All right. So I tend to go USC, but again, I would have to make a list, size them up, go from there. If we're talking about the NFL, I don't know that anyone can touch USC. Can anyone touch Marcus Allen? OJ, Ricky Bell had a decent career. Reggie Bush, Ronald Jones, I believe, is having a nice NFL career. All right, we'll keep it moving here. The Voice of College Football. Again, we go 1 hour every day, Monday through Friday, but would love to stay on for longer. You control overtime. So we appreciate your support. All right, let's keep it rolling here. The Voice of College Football. Before we get to the graphic that's on the screen there, Chris, welcome to the show, sir.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You were talking a little bit, I guess, about the preseason polls, weren't you?
Yes.
I have Notre Dame's, it's an archive with Notre Dame's ranking. It looks like they were for 60, they had 60 seasons on there. Anyway, seems like they had them unranked 8 years, and then, I'm sorry, initially unranked 8 seasons out of 60, and then unranked 24 out of 60 in the final poll. I don't know if that helps figure out whether they're...
that's perfect. So going to Sports Reference.
So in 60 seasons, they had unranked 6 years preseason, and then unranked 24 final poll in 60 seasons, I guess, or 60. I'm looking at it right now as I'm talking to you.
Sure. I am about to here in a second. So I don't know if you're looking at the same site, but they should all have the same information. All right. So, so basically what everyone, what Chris is alluding to is that Biggs Mike's made a statement about Notre Dame's usually overrated. I said, I don't know. I don't believe so. I know that that's a common theme with Notre Dame and Texas, but let's look at it. Can everybody see the screen? I can't blow up the numbers, I don't think, because then we'll lose the numbers. Maybe I can somewhat.
I can tell you what they are. I'm looking at it myself.
So. Well, I am too. So let's follow along together here. Hang on just a second. So we've got. So read them off, Chris.
Well, no, I don't know what season you want to talk about, but it looks like.
Well, we don't need to talk about any season. Let's just run them down here. 2023, they were preseason 13. They were postseason 14. That's right. Pretty close. 2022, they were preseason 5. They finished 18. So you could say they were overrated. 2021, preseason 9, finished 8. 2020, preseason 10, finished 5. 2019, preseason 9, finished 12. 2018, preseason 12, finished 5. 2017, preseason unranked, finished 11. 2016, right. Number 10, preseason unranked, dead on in 2015. Preseason 11, finished 11, and we could continue, but I think it's pretty obvious to see that Notre Dame is not overrated, at least in the last 10 years.
No, it's interesting to look at the, I don't see a huge difference, I guess, between, I don't know. I didn't know you shared something with me I wasn't aware of. I didn't know that they were trying to predict the way they were going to finish. I never really knew that. I thought that was not really what they were doing, but I don't understand.
Well, it depends on the person.
Well, no, I thought you told me you said that they were trying to predict the finish of the
particular people do. Oh. These from my understanding, these AP, we'll take the AP, for example, these writers are given no instructions.
Oh.
Just fill this thing out, and whatever you think, whatever your judgment is of this situation. But in my conversations with AP writers, I've asked them, what is your approach? What are you telling us by giving us a preseason top 25? And some of them start to talk about schedule. Well, as soon as you mention schedule, that means you are projecting wins and losses.
Uh-huh. Anyway, it does seem to lean a little bit towards, I mean, in fairness to the question, I guess I have a different read on it maybe than you do. I kind of seems to lean a little bit towards them maybe being overrated at the beginning. That's assuming that they're trying to do is predict the result. But if they're not, then maybe there isn't, if you understand what I'm trying to tell you.
Sure.
I mean, it seems to lean a little bit towards them being better than they were. So I don't know if that means that they don't know as good as how they are, or I don't know if you want to call that bias or what do you want to call it. I'm not really sure, but I do see a difference between, you might not see it, but I don't know if you're looking at the same thing I'm looking at.
You're looking at all time, right? I just looked at the last 10 years.
Almost every year it looks like they finish a little bit lower than, I mean, there might be a couple of exceptions, but yeah, it looks like for the most part, they finished a little bit lower than where they were.
2023 is inconsequential, 13, 14, whatever. 2022, yes, they finished lower by 13 spots.
Well, no, I mean, almost every season's that way.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
2023 is not. 2021 is not. 2020, they finished higher. 2019 is not. 2018 is not. 2017, they finished number 11 in the country. They were preseason unranked. If anything, they have overachieved the last 6 or 7 seasons.
Well, I don't know. I'm just basing it on what I'm looking at it myself and trying.
I'm looking at it as well. It's basically inconsequential. We could go to any school in the country and throw up those numbers, and we wouldn't know who we were talking about because there is not any kind of favoritism or underrated aspect to the preseason ranking concerning Notre Dame in the last 10 years. I'm not looking all time. We can, but.
Well, I don't know. What was the context of the question within the recent? I don't remember. I thought he was asking just in the, maybe I missed the question itself, but I guess if I had to draw a conclusion, I would say that they're definitely given a higher rating than what they should. But that's not to just diminish the
I'm not seeing this at all. Look at the early 2000s. 2004, unranked. Okay, they finished 6 and 6.
For some reason, I don't have that one on my screen. I don't have 2004 on my screen or 2005.
Well, I'm looking at it. It's on everybody else's screen that's watching the show here. So,
well, I have every other. I guess I don't have the ones where they don't start or finish rated.
Okay.
To me, that's inconsequential, so it's not even.
Sure, exactly. Most of these are inconsequential. 2004, preseason unranked, finished unranked. 2003, preseason 20, postseason unranked. Okay. In those situations, the other thing we've got to consider is that, and this may not ever factor into this analysis, but Minnesota, for example, Chris, the last 2 seasons prior to 2023, in 21 and 22, they finished 9 and 4. And they did not get ranked either season. Could they have been ranked? Were there other 9 and 4 teams and even 8 and 5 teams that got ranked? Yes. So if we were looking at Minnesota, let's say they were preseason 23 and they finished unranked, our conclusion would be they were overrated. No, they weren't. The writers just chose not to rank them at the end of the season.
Well, I guess we're kind of like bickering over like 2 or 3 points.
Well, I'm not bickering. I'm not bickering with you. I'm just stating that happens. We hold up this top 25 like it's the holy grail, and that number 26 somehow becomes this horrible team. I'm not saying you do this, Chris. I'm saying that the general public, without thinking about it, believes that, okay, you're not ranked, you're no good. When in fact, the next 15 teams are pretty much just as good as the teams at the back end of the top 25.
No, I tend to agree that there's, I agree with that statement, I guess. I don't know how much the polls really affect I don't know. I mean, I'm not clued into it as much as you are as far as how much they matter, but I'm still confused though. You were having a discussion with the guy about, admitting 8 and 4. Maybe you didn't. I don't know, I could be misquoting you. I thought maybe that's because of what you just said, but I thought you were saying something about possibly admitting like an 8 and 4 team to a playoff. I don't know. Where do we draw the line as far as like, at some point I kind of wonder, just to myself, I guess, because there's going to be more. It seems like the tendency isn't going to be to limit more teams. It's going to be include more. At what point does it become maybe the record itself limiting as far as being accepted? I kind of wonder, because I never really thought personally, and it's not to diminish the idea that you might have a 2-loss team that could maybe win a title, but just from the fact that in history, I guess, I can't even, there's been people said, oh no, there's been plenty of examples where a 2-loss team was, well, in my opinion, I think if you lose 2 games, I mean, at that point, you probably, the season's so short, Mark, I understand the idea that, well, our team might still be the best team. We lost 2, I think we've used Alabama as an example, but I kind of wonder, I still think that, if you lose 2 games, that's pretty strong evidence you're probably not the best team in the country. But I know you probably don't share that opinion, but
then we're not going to be filling out a playoff field. There will be 2-loss teams in the playoff because there have to be 2-loss teams in the playoff because there are not enough 0 and 1-loss teams to fill out a 12-team field.
Well, that's true, I guess, but I don't know.
Not you guess. It is. It is true. You go to every season. It's not mathematically feasible. I'm sure it's possible that we could configure some kind of season where we had 12 teams that had only 1 loss, that's possible, but it's obviously not feasible. It's not going to happen because of the way results land. So there will be 2-loss teams in the playoffs, and they will have earned it based on being one of the 12 best teams in the country, or 11 best teams. We'll have to make that distinction. It's the 11 best teams in the country and one outlier that's about 25 or 30.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a little dagger at you here.
Okay.
So let's admit every 2-loss team. You know how that would have.
I didn't say we were going to admit every 2-loss team. We can't do that either.
Well, that's why it becomes kind of an issue then. If you can't admit
of course,
every 2-loss
yeah,
team.
that's why there's a selection committee. They select.
Well, I kind of look at it differently because I'm like, if you're going to admit a 2-loss team, then you have to admit all 2-loss teams to be. If you're not to keep it objective, I don't see how you can admit one. It's kind of like the idea that
that's what's being done, though. I don't disagree with you, Chris, but you can't build a system that says, okay, this season we're going to have 17 teams in the playoffs. Next year we're going to have 9 teams in the playoffs. Plus, all 10-2 records are not created equal.
Well, I understand that. No, I do understand that.
But I generally agree with you that I would like to see more objectivity given to the process.
Well, I guess it's still, I mean, we're still talking about a 12-game season where, I mean, what percentage is 2 out of 12, 1 out of 6? I mean, at what point does losing not matter, I guess? It's like, well, then we're going to start, it's going to eventually, because I know I'm not so stupid, I can't figure this out. Well, you know, this 2-loss team just won a title. Why don't we admit that that 3-loss team, they, you know.
Chris, there's a 12-team playoff. There's not some arbitrary decision about how many teams are going to be in the playoff. There's going to be 12 teams. So mathematically speaking, it's not about, oh, a 2-loss team just won the national championship. Let's let in 3-loss teams.
Well, no, I just think that over time, that's going to be the case where you're going to have people that are going to be like, well, our team was almost as good as that team. You know, why couldn't they get the chance that they got? And so there's going to be, just like it was when there was only 2 teams that were in the championship, it's going to be, we need more. It's just going to keep bringing more teams in there. I know that for a fact, Mark, because I'm not.
Well, it's not a fact because it is yet to happen. I don't disagree with you, Chris. I don't disagree with you, Chris, because the motivating factor is what?
I don't know.
Money. So the more games that are played, the more money they can make. But there's a problem in this sport, and it's called injury. So it's not another sport where they can say, you know what, let's just keep tacking on to this playoff. Well, let's make it 16. And then in a couple of years, we'll make it 32.
Well, that's what's going to happen. That's kind of my point.
That's not going to happen because we're not going to have players on the field because either they're going to be hurt or they're going to be opting out of these games. So I don't see that expanding past 16.
Well, I don't know. I sent you a couple emails about this. Maybe you didn't get them, but one of the arguments you made, and I don't mean to be critical of you, Mark, but you did make the argument, was that in 1984 they needed a 16-team tournament. I went back and looked.
No. I did.
Yes.
Please. And this, I'm sure this happens all the time, not just to me, but I said something that got misconstrued. So you did not hear me correctly. I did not say that there needed to be a 16-team playoff in 1984. I said I was in school in 1984 and I wrote a paper about forming a 16-team playoff. Those are 2 entirely different situations.
Well, at any rate, I went back and looked to see how, or not that there's anything wrong with that idea, but for it to really work and work practically and be objective, I determined it should be at least 32. Now, it's not because I want 32 in there, but it's like I kind of looked at the way 16 would work out, and it's like, well, to be completely objective and to include almost every team that had a legitimate, chance to win, I guess. In my opinion, you had to take more teams to get the best teams in the tournament to where it's not just somebody's idea about who should go and who shouldn't. So it's like, in my opinion, it should have included as many as 32. And it wasn't just because I thought so. I mean, I did all the math and kind of tried to see if that was a practical way, and it really kind of was. And that's as limiting as you can make it, really, and to still be objective, is includes 32 teams.
Chris, we appreciate. Don't agree with that. We appreciate the conversation. We've got to move on. We've got our guest checking in, so call back, and we will continue the conversation.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Chris. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got Josh Neighbors checking in from Bleacher Reports. the Big 12 Watch and also 103.7 The Buzz. Josh, how you doing today?
I'm well. I'm fresh off the air coming to you, Mark.
Nice.
After 4-hour program, so I'm ready to
go. So I don't know if you're worn down or you're warmed up.
No, wasn't much talking for me today because we were doing actually a dedication. Justin Moore, the radio host, Arkansan, he's a country singer too. He's Arkansan. They dedicated a sign today. So the governor was there. A whole lot of dignitaries were there. So a sign dedication on the radio is not the easiest thing to navigate. So yeah.
You got to be quite descriptive in that vein. Very good. Well, we appreciate Josh being here, and we will certainly catch up on everything that Josh has going on, but we'll dive into the Big 12 here. All right. So despite all the inequities across the board in regards to college football playoff distribution and everything else we've seen, Brett Yormark, as he should, talks very optimistically about the position of the conference and the level playing field and it being the best position that it's been. I don't agree with most of his comments. However, I understand what position he has to take as the commissioner, and I believe he's doing a hell of a job because he is basically just like on the football field itself. When you've got less talent, less resources, what do? Well, you call more trick plays, you call more blitzes, you do whatever you have to do to scheme to make up the gap. And so when it comes to talking about private equity firms, when it deals with naming rights of the conference, where do you think Brett Yormark stands, playing games in different locations, all the things that he's concocted or proposed?
Yeah. So I think this is where he comes in as a guy who is not a college sports guy, right? This is kind of the benefit of that. And the meeting area is that you've got the commissioner being a guy who's a non-college sports, but still sports business guy, meeting with the Big 12, whatever you call it. I think it's board of directors or presidents, whatever it is. Those people are more classical college people, right? Brett Yormark can't make a decision without them. So you kind of bring in a guy like that where he can throw his ideas out there and they can kind of pick and choose which ones they like the most. That's kind of, I think this thing works. He's got to sell. So he's got to be selling. That's kind of his job. He hasn't stopped selling since he became the commissioner of the Big 12. And look, like it, I would give you the example of this private equity conversation and then trying to sell the naming rights. It was a story a couple of weeks ago about them doing it. And a couple companies were mentioned, a couple firms were mentioned. It's not really about those specific firms. It's more about the idea as a whole, right? It's kind of a pitch to everybody. If you leak a story about private equity being involved, it's a message to all private equity saying we're open for business. We are down to attempt this. Doesn't just mean that they're locked into one. Same thing for naming rights. You're telling everybody out there, Allstate might be the company that's talked about, but you might be saying, hey, we're open to anybody coming in and potentially doing this. And same thing with the Clemson, Florida State stuff. Like, there's no downside to the Big 12 being linked to Clemson and Florida State. If they don't get them, they don't get them. I mean, what does it hurt the Big 12 to make it sound like they were in the mix for two big brands like that? That's the whole point of this entire thing. And so I think the publicity part of it is the part that he actually can control and he can take care of, because he can't affect recruiting. He can't affect the on-field product. I mean, it's like, maybe in some ways, but like nobody's joining the Big 12 for Brett Yormark. Nobody's playing football for TCU for Brett Yormark. So he's controlling what he can control, which is the public image part of it. And I think he's done a pretty good job. I mean, all things considered, they're not the SEC, they're not the Big 10.
Absolutely.
But he's got a certain hand dealt and he's doing a pretty good job with it, I think.
Yeah. Again, I have certainly been impressed with his approach and with his boldness. The ACC could have used that type of leadership over the last several years, and his ingenuity. I just have taken task in regards to, at times, some of the statements he makes that I don't believe are truthful, but right. That's fine. They're not lies. They're just hyperbole to promote his conference and the outlook of the conference. Okay. When we look at teams in the Big 12, again, depending on your perspective, folks, I think it's the most fun conference in college football. It's the most unpredictable. There's going to be the largest number of games every week to say 50-50, 60-40. Okay, Utah seems to be the team that's going to be the highest ranked, but not by much across the board. So starting with the contenders, What are we possibly missing about any one of them? Or what do you think is important over the next month to try to figure out as these teams are in camp?
So I think to start off, at least at one of the big sports books, I'm not sure if you have a certain sports book you prefer, Mark. Is there one that your program's connected with?
No, there is not.
Okay.
You were
So at FanDuel, I think they started off having Utah and K-State pretty much at the same odds level. They were kind of co-favorites, if you will, but not by a convincing margin. FPI, ESPN's predictive model, I think it has KU winning the league. And then I think the media also picked Utah. So you've got all these different things. And then if you check different magazines, whatnot, people have different predictions. It starts with Utah because they've got the most returning. So they've got the most returning. They've got a really good schedule, and they've got, for my money, definitely a top 10 coach in America in Kyle Whittingham. Sad thing is that I'm not sure how much longer he's going to be doing it, but they've got a really super good schedule. Things set up really, really well for them this year. So all that stuff combined, I would say I like that a lot. K-State is kind of a number 2. I like it, but like, have we watched Avery Johnson pass the football? Like it's happened. We've seen one game, and look, I saw him throw some in camp. It's not a refined product quite yet, which is fine because he's so young, and that backfield's going to be a really strong backfield. They bring in Dylan Edwards from Colorado. They've got DJ Giddens back, and I mean, we even saw it last year. West Virginia did this to great effect. The 3-headed monster they had there with Garrett Green and with Jaheim White and also CJ Donaldson. So they've got a chance to really, run things well. And they needed to make the move from Will Howard to Johnson just because I think personnel wise, they have a much better chance at running the football first and then passing off of that, as opposed to Will Howard, which is a bit more of a combination of both. So I would say I think KU, I want to say could do it, but their defense, I don't trust enough. They got a lot of guys back on defense. Jalen Daniels doesn't stay healthy enough. And also they don't play consecutive games in the same state. Because they're going to be playing their conference games at Arrowhead, and they're going to be playing their non-conference home games at Children's Mercy Park in KC, where the KC Current and Sporting KC play. So, maybe they fall in a rhythm of being home 1 week, away next week, home 1 week, away next week. But they're going to be traveling a decent bit, and they're not going to be in their own stadium. So I've got some questions there. Oklahoma State, I don't think Alan Bowman's very good. I kind of starts and ends for me with right there. Like God love Mike Gunn, did a great job last year. Alan Bowman's not good enough. I'm surprised they didn't upgrade a quarterback, and I will keep saying that until they can't win a Big 12 championship with him at quarterback. I feel pretty confident saying that. I'll eat my words if he does, but I feel pretty confident in saying that. So I think that's kind of where I am with the favorites. Arizona in there, their schedule's super hard though. It's really difficult schedule. UCF's defense to me is not good enough. They're not proven enough. I'm not sure where KJ Jefferson is. So to me, it's at the top, Utah, K-State. I would maybe chuck West Virginia in there, but their schedule's really hard too. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think the favorites, they should be the favorites. But once again, this league is pretty wide open.
I've been a KJ Jefferson supporter for quite some time here. I think he's been overlooked. He trucks safeties. He had a 21-4 and 21-5 TD to pick ratio in back-to-back seasons, with coming from a guy that for his first 100 attempts in college football was sub 50%, became a 68-69% completion guy. I just think that team's going to be fun to watch. RJ Harvey at running back, Gus Malzahn with some weapons that he, of course, can mastermind offensively. But yeah, I don't know. They really did the overhaul in the transfer portal on defense, but it's probably not going to be good enough. Josh Neighbors here from Bleacher Report, again, the Big 12 Watch and 103.7 The Buzz. So yeah, any other thoughts about UCF?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's like, if you could pair up a quarterback with a coach, Gus Malzahn, and I'll tell you what, because like all the talk here in Arkansas was about, would Pittman be gone? Would it be Gus coming in? Gus and KJ, good fit. Well, ultimately, Gus and KJ end up, linking up. It's just it's a UCF, which is weird because if you were to say, hey, if you were to say last year at this time, all right, this is how it goes down. If you had to say where Gus Malzahn from Arkansas and KJ Jefferson, who owns a lot of Arkansas records, end up linking up, you'd be like, well, it's probably at Arkansas if they fire Pittman and keep KJ. No, it turns out they're gonna combine at UCF. I'm a KJ supporter too. Mentally, things really went downhill for him last year. That's not all his fault. Part of it's his fault. I'm curious to see confidence-wise area where he is, and they've got a lot of weapons. He's never really impressed me as a passer. He's kind of got that Cam Newton like low release point. Looks like a guy trying to bury a slider. So yeah, I'm curious to see, but it's hard because you don't know how good their defense is going to be. And they portaled pretty hard, especially in the middle of that defense. I think they've got 5 guys in the middle of that defense. Yeah, all their linebacker positions are going to be guys who are transfers. They had a couple transfers in the back end too. I think they can get good personnel there. I just think it's going to take some time for them to adjust the Big 12. And maybe if they want to take that next step, the caliber of guy Utah has is better than the caliber of guy on defense that UCF has. And if you want to think about competing for, winning playoff games, you need to start looking more like Utah and go from there and try to look more like, Georgia. But you have to get to that Utah level first before you can start thinking about going up to that next weight class.
Josh, as you brushed across the top of the league and the expected contenders, you hit on some scheduling quirks, some advantages, disadvantages. I recently posted a video comparing Oklahoma, Texas, what the SEC is doing with schedules for as out in front and visionary as that conference has been on so many fronts. I think they have botched the scheduling for a long, long time. And I went through a lot of inaccuracies there. Rutgers in the Big Ten, and I know that they're not supposed to be a contender. They won't be a contender, but still, when you don't play the 5 highest ranked teams in the conference, just doesn't seem like it's a equitable schedule. So have you found any just landmine schedules versus what is going on here? Kansas State and Kansas are roughly the same team in terms of how good they are. Why is there this huge imbalance? Anything out there like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say West Virginia's schedule. Look, so there was some criticism Brett Yormark took for the way the schedule broke down. But here's the thing about it is that I was doing the West Virginia preview the other day, and they've never played Arizona. And so the way the schedule is going to work out is these first 2 years, everybody's going to play everybody. And to me, that's a good thing because these teams don't have history. So they need to make sure everybody plays everybody over the next few years. Everybody gets home and away and all that stuff under the belts. And so because of that, I think it's like that's a good thing to have. Some other games get lost on a yearly basis because of that. But there's a couple weird ones. We've got some weird things happening this year in the conference. And I don't think the Big 12 is the only conference with this happening. But you've got a situation where there are 2 games that would be Big 12 conference games that are going to be non-conference games. I know Wake Forest and Carolina did this a couple years ago, so they keep the rivalry going. But we've got K-State playing Arizona, non-con game, which is a really good game, by the way. And we got Baylor and Utah, the rematch of last year's game. So those are weird ones, and that's what makes Arizona. Because I'm a huge Noah Fifita guy. Like I think he's the best quarterback in the league. But that's what makes their schedule so hard is that they've got to add that K-State game into their schedule. So they're at K-State, at Utah, at BYU, at UCF, and at TCU. It's not the easiest. They have Texas Tech at home, West Virginia at home. So those are still those are tough teams you're going to have to play. And Lord knows how good Colorado is going to be. But that's a pretty difficult schedule for Arizona. West Virginia's got a pretty tough schedule too. I think West Virginia could end up being better than they were last year and have a worse record, much like Florida, right? Florida's got the hardest schedule ever. Florida could end up being much better than last year, but probably still have the same record, if not a worse record.
No doubt. So you like Arizona. Of course, the headliners there, Brent Brennan replacing Jed Fish, Noah Fifita back at quarterback. So they were able to maintain that, which was enormous. And of course, bring back their best defensive player and
wide receiver biggest threat.
Yeah. So you like Arizona?
I think Noah Fifita is he's got whatever it is that if people say it factor, that guy is. I think he could be one of the best quarterbacks in college football at the end of this year. just what he did last year in the competition level. I mean, he played in some really big games and just seemed unfazed for a guy of his size. He kind of had that. I saw a couple times in the OU game, especially. He had that spin move Tony Romo used to do, where Romo would range, like he's right-handed, and he'd spin back and kind of just basically do a 360 spin away from a defender, set his feet and throw. He was really good at that. Fafita's kind of got that down already. And so I think for a guy of his age, his numbers were off. It just popped off the charts last year. And Jonah Coleman's a big miss that they're not going to have in the backfield with him. But if they can get Teteroa McMillan back and healthy and on the field, we'll see what Brennan can do. People seem to think he's a pretty good coach. I don't know much about him to be able to say a whole lot about it. But you got a kid like Fafita. It feels like if he was that good already without a full season being the starter, I mean, he kicked Jaden Delora out of town. He chased him out of town. And Delora was a really good teammate through all of that, but I think it spoke to kind of the attitude of Fafita, that just a humble, positive guy, a lot of confidence. Reminds me of Tua, just the size, the really good arm too. Maybe not as good of an arm as Tua, but I think he may be a bit more accurate, shorter passer than Tua was at this point of his career.
I'm there with Brennan as well. Winning at San Jose State is not a easy thing to do. They've been awful for generations, and he goes 7-5, 7-6 the last 2 years. That doesn't seem great, but compared to what he inherited, so leave it into the hands. If this was a school that had a great hire after great hire after great hire, I'd be a little bit more confident. But of course, they made a couple bad hires followed by a really good hire. Ironically, the least known of the three was the best hire in Jed Fish, but we'll see about Arizona. Iowa State reminds me of the Iowa State situation heading into, I believe it would have been 2021, after they lost the Big 12 championship game, won the Fiesta Bowl, had Brock Purdy coming back, Charlie Kolar, offensive line. They were just loaded on both sides of the ball with returning veterans who were players, and they fell flat at 7-6. And now they've got another array of veteran players coming back both sides of the ball, and I like Iowa State.
Yeah, so what's interesting about Iowa State is I like how much returning they have. Like that's the positive part for them. The part that concerns me is that I don't know how good the group. I don't know what their upper level is. I don't really know what the ceiling is for this group, because they got smoked by Memphis in the bowl game. They were not competitive enough in that game, I thought. I think Rocco Beck's really good. I think they're, and I think people believe that, Abu Sama is going to be a really good player. And both those guys are sophomores, right? The tight end's a sophomore. Their receiving core is pretty old this year, which is a good thing. Their offensive line's a little bit of a hodgepodge, a little bit of a mix. But their defense, they bring back a lot, and obviously how good their defense is going to be. I was just never blown away by how good they were last year. And I just don't know how good the group can be. Doesn't mean they can't be good. And I think they've got a really good coach in Matt Campbell. And they've always been a player development school. It's good that they got a lot of young guys opportunities to play last year, because, the betting scandal kind of worked out in their favor. I mean, they just kind of stumbled upon Rocco Beck, right? And it really worked out well for them. So yeah, I'm excited to see what that growth looks like. I think this is one of those classic Matt Campbell groups. And if they can set a foundation this year, I know it's gonna be hard to replace a wide receiver, what they're going to lose. But if they can kind of set a foundation this year, they might be able to take a leap if they can kill it in the portal the following season. Or this might be the season that they're looking for. That's always possible.
Can't let you go without asking about Colorado, the wild card. So try to give us as much intel and perspective on Colorado. I'll throw one stat at you, Josh, that has become my favorite self-proclaimed personal stat that I keep track of. So you may want to add it at some point if you find this valuable. I recognized 7-8 years ago, Street and Smith's, Athlon's, all fine publications, Lindy's, all of them, very conservative when predicting records. Pretty much I'd go through the magazine and I'd say, what were these teams last year? 8-4, 8-4, 7-5, 8-4, staying within about a game. I was like, is that actually what's going on in college football? Because it kind of seems like it, because Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, they're always up at the top. But then I started to go through that process and I determined, okay, what's a much different season? What's the barometer? I'm going to go 3 games. You go from 6-6 to 9-3, or to 3-9. That's going to be my barometer for being a much different season. I started going through every year for the last 6 or 7 years. That number among the Power 70 is usually about 18 to 22 teams that have that much of a change from one year to the, like a third of the sport. Last year, it was 26 teams. Now, that was bolstered a little bit by the Big 12, adding the teams that obviously all dropped.
Right.
Still, that was only 4 teams.
They
all hit a wall. Yeah. They went 8-28 in the conference. Yes. So just to give you a little fodder in terms of, put that in your back pocket, things change across college football, I think, more than I thought, and most people that I throw that stat at.
So Colorado they're not just interesting for Deion Sanders. Like people I think are sick of that. But like, what's really interesting here is that you have one of the most independently famous people. He is the most independently famous college football coach, I would argue. Like, he is, and I think he's the most recognizable person in college football, you could argue. And his son is probably up there in top 5 as well. I mean, I would maybe put some other coaches there, but like his son is really recognizable as far as college football goes right now. Number one is, does he want to leave after his kids are gone? That's my big thing. Is this a building project or is it not? Because his son's gone after this year. And I'm curious to see if he has any designs on leaving Colorado, going somewhere else. Second big thing is, can you build a team this way? Because we've seen teams go portal heavy, like Texas State did a bunch with Jake Spavital. And I know that DJ Kinney did the same thing last year at Texas State, but he's really hoping to recultivate Texas and build from there. Because Deion can recruit. The hard part for me is it's hard to flip rosters like that every single year. It's really, really challenging to do that. And it's also really hard to have top-heavy rosters. Those rosters will do well in September, i.e. last season. Also, another example I give is KU a few years ago, when Kansas had that really nice season. Look, they went 5-1, I think, and then Daniels got hurt against TCU, and they end up going 6-6, 6-7 to end the year. So can you build a roster like that way where it's just like depth matters so much? And they have not, to me, built a lot of competitive depth. And the issue that I hated the most for them, I hated the fact that when Deion came in and said, I'm bringing my Louis, he didn't do any scouting of the roster at all to be like, do I have any rotational players here? He just told everybody to go kick rocks. And he didn't treat the guys who could have been rotational players pretty well. And like, you need those guys because it's not all starters. Because if you're going to play Travis Hunter 100 and some snaps, you better have somebody behind him that can play. And I did not like the fact that he demoted Sean Lewis last year. I understand why you want Pat Shermer because you want NFL feel for your son at quarterback. But like, veer and shoot's what you run, because the big problem with them is too, they can't run the football at all. But like, your short passing game needs to be what you run. You do not need anything pro style. Like you should be West Coast. If you're going to go like any NFL offense, and I'm not even sure how much West Coast really left out there. It's kind of up for debate. But like, if you're going to go air raid concepts, which are all over the NFL, like it should be screens, short passes, stuff over the middle, because Shedeur is actually a very, very accurate passer. It's one thing that he is. So I don't feel like the decisions are all adding up. Like, he's getting good personnel, got a good quarterback. They had really good game plans in September last year. They had really strong game plans. It's just not consistent enough for me to pick out anything. Like, they might do what you're talking about this year, Mark, but I'm a really like, show me. I want tangible evidence and proof. And there's not enough out there consistently across the board that like shows me. Like, they were less competitive in games at the end of the year than they were in the beginning of the year. That's a huge concern to me. That's not the way you want to go. So it's just really hard to prognosticate about how good they're going to be when that was the case.
And my thought process going into 2023 was, they're throwing 80 some players together for the first time. Yeah. They should be better later in the season.
Right.
And then once they ripped off the wins against TCU and Nebraska, I thought, wow, I didn't think that they were going to beat Oregon and all these other teams, but I thought, wow, this is going to be a team that is going to probably get to that 6-6 range and maybe pull off, maybe as they kind of scared USC, they might be able to pull off one major upset. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Josh, we appreciate you being here. We want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you and what you've got going on.
Yeah, so you all can find the Big 12 Watch, 365 Sports. You guys can find it. Crystal Ball College Football is the channel. Also, Big 12 Watch, wherever you all get your podcasts. You guys can find me on X/Twitter at JoshNeighbors_ and at NWPod365. I also do streams for Bleacher Report periodically as well. And then if you all wake up between 6-10 a.m. and you want a show, it's a little bit of sports and a whole lot of everything else crazy. Morning Mayhem on 103.7 The Buzz is where you all can also find me as well. It's on YouTube. It's on TuneIn. It's on the 103.7 The Buzz app. And Mark, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Appreciate you having me on.
Always smart stuff. Josh, thank you so much for being here. Have a good day. All right. Good stuff from Josh Neighbors, Bleacher Report, 103.7 The Buzz. All right. So we have given you bonus material today, courtesy Josh and others, and phone calls. So we do all appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And keep in mind that what is more important than football? Well, the list is about 37 items long. But in particular, what's more important than your football viewing this year is that you take care of yourself. So your health and fitness goals, keep those in mind as well. Listen up. We have a new sponsor, Chris Gates, and his online fitness membership called Training Camp. It's a monthly fitness program designed specifically for football fans, and it's really like nothing you've seen before. I've looked through the website, and the combination of the personal touch and the community, the coaching instructions, all of it put together is really unlike anything that I've seen. And I've got friends who have workout apps. I have had workout apps, and they're very impersonal. They're decent. They get the job done. They do what you would think that they would do. But what do most of us need? Where have most of us struggled when it comes to eating or workouts? Motivation, consistency, being accountable. Okay. Well, Chris, he's been coaching people for years. He's created a community and training camp that blends fitness, sports together to help you achieve your goals while connecting you with a community of sports fans that are doing the same thing you are. So you've maybe struggled to stay consistent in the past, felt confused, didn't know what exercises to do, how to do them, or just needed that additional accountability. Training Camp is here to help. When you join Training Camp, you'll get that top-notch coaching from Chris. He'll deliver monthly workout plans to help remove all the guesswork with exercising, so you can just show up, do the work, put it in, be confident that what you're doing is working. Realize that many people go to the gym, you included, me included, at times, and we're really not benefiting ourselves as much as we think we are, or definitely as much as we should be. So this is a customizable plan that is designed to fit your busy schedule and also to show real progress. Training Camp is centered around sustainable results, no crash diets, no extreme routines. You can drink beer, tailgate for the games, do all those fun things, and still know that you're making progress. All right. Go to the link in the description section of this video. It's right at the top. And of all the videos here at the Voice of College Football, Chris Gates Fitness Training Camp, and put in the promo code VOICE. Great stuff from Chris. I can't wait to get started myself because my fitness and my exercise routine has been haphazard. I'm all over the place doing different things. So we thank so much Chris and his partnership here at the Voice of College Football. We wanted to get into so much more. We wanted to take your calls. I had some really good topics here. I wanted to dive into We didn't even get through the headlines. We got to one headline, and we wanted to get to, save this one. Most hated man in college football. A coaching void in the sport. I was going to propose that topic. Also, we were going to look at the teams that have won the most top 10 games, beaten the most top 10 opponents in the playoff era. All of that could have been yours, but we could not make it to overtime here at the Voice of College Football today. But tomorrow is a new day. So we will attempt to get this show again to overtime. Here's the schedule. We've got Miami at 1:30. We've got Florida State at 6. And we've got the Mountaineer Locker Room show at 8 p.m. Eastern time on those respective channels. From the Voice of College Football to you, we appreciate you stopping by and make us the rest of your day as well. Miami at 1:30. See you then.